Hey everyone, hope all of you are doing well and welcome back to Theonopolis, where today we are going to build this sort of apartment complex type building. And I originally thought I could finish this building in, well, an hour, so that's 10 minutes of footage for you guys. But of course, whenever I try to make something simple and small, it usually turns out large and huge and just... I think this video today is just a perfect example of that because, as I said, I thought I could finish this building in, well, 10 minutes of footage for you guys, but it's turning out to be it's the majority of today's video. So I did think or look at like, oh, where can I like cut out stuff that is not completely necessary or where I'm copying stuff. And yeah, we are still at like almost 35 minutes of footage. So that happened. But anyway, I did promise that the kiddie coaster is going to come. Like I originally promised that it was going to be this video, but then I went crazy with this apartment complex and, well, it is coming. I've already started building on it, so it is going to be in the next video. And it's an interesting kiddie slash family coaster, I would say. But anyway, back to what we're building today. So yes, as I said, we are going to be building this sort of apartment complex building. The idea behind the building was that it's not, well, not actually one building in a sort of way, but multiple buildings stuck together to form this sort of courtyard space. And I really like the building. I say that with almost all of the buildings because, I mean, it's a bad thing if you can look back at something you've built and say, I hate it. Because then you should probably work more on it or try again. So me saying that I like it is kind of, yeah, not necessary, but I wanted to say I like it again. But anyway, I like it because it's a little bit different than the upper middle class home that we built in the previous video, because it's a little bit mixing of the Midas district, which is the more wealthy district, and the Outskirts, which is, well, that's the district that we're building in right now. And it's not that it's using any marble, it's just that there's a little bit more stone, especially in the, well, the left block of the building, because that part of the building is really close to the Midas district. Actually, this entire building is quite close to the Midas district, which again is the more wealthy district of Theonopolis. And it was a little bit weird to build this building because the idea was that it's like 3 different buildings, so every building needed to be kind of similar to each other, but not so much that it looked like it was all built by one person. Eventually though, I do think that it's probably owned maybe by one person, but then it's like rented out because, again, like it's an apartment building. So this is probably actually where the, I wouldn't say the poorest people in Theonopolis would live, but certainly not a household who can afford their own home. Like the upper middle class home of the last video, the people living there are probably a lot wealthier than anyone living in here. Though I don't want to make it look run down, because whenever you make something that's not, you know, upper or middle class, it just feels like a bit of a cop-out to me. I've said this before in previous videos, but making something look run down, unless it's like an apocalypse style building, well, unless there's a story behind it, I generally don't want to do that. I don't want to make it all pristine and perfect, but I also don't want to make it completely run down. But anyway, so this building is probably the most functional building almost in Theonopolis, because it has actually, I think if I'm correct, 6 places where you can place a shop down. I did board them up for, well, in here, because I just thought like, alright, I want to place this building on the workshop, but I don't want it to make it so that you need to place a shop in every location that is built for a shop, so that if you want to have only 4 shops, you can basically open up 4 windows and then you can place a shop in there and leave 2 of the rest of the windows. And it also has a toilet building. I'm thinking of actually opening up another, well, wall and making it into a staff area also, so that you really have a lot of functions in just this one building. Granted, however, this building is quite large, and as I said, I went a little bit insane with it because I wanted to make it look like 3 buildings, so I needed to also make it look like, oh, this was built by 3 different people. Maybe nowadays it's owned by 1 person and then rented out to a lot of people, but I wanted it to feel like it was just built by 3 different people, and then, or well, 3 different families, is probably the better word for it. But the idea was still that it was a little bit different, that every little block, I would say, of the building has its own kind of flavor or own style a little bit, but then also make it in such a way that it's not too much contrasting with each other, that it still feels like one cohesive building where you look at it in total. So that was a little bit of fun things to do, because when it's one building, it's a little bit easier to make it feel lived in, to basically add a lot of I forgot the word for it again, but just add a lot of stuff that you normally see, like a lot of pots, maybe some, well, a broom or something like that, a canopy. For me, that's a lot easier when I'm thinking of like, alright, this is built by 1 family or 1 person. But when I need to make a building that is actually on 1 grid and make it into, well, multiple builders, it kind of gets a little bit harder for me. Just because, again, you want it to be completely different, or not completely, but different enough that you can see that it's, well, not built by 1 person. But if you make it too different, it kind of breaks it again, because then it's just like a little bit too much busyness, a little bit too much craziness, I would say. But yeah, quickly adding one of the, well, shop fronts or shop windows. Again, when I place this on the workshop, all of these shop windows are going to be boarded up, so that you can basically choose yourself if you want to open certain windows and other windows want to keep them closed. But still, I wanted to make it so that even if they are closed up, that it would still look not horrible. I think it still looks better if you place a shop in every one of them, but yeah, that's just personal opinion probably. But this is also the one area, or the one, well, basically wall that actually has terraces. And it's probably the busiest part of the entire building. The courtyard is actually pretty muted. Well, it has been taken over by chickens, because there is some TMTK items in here. Especially those chickens, because I don't know, well, it's just that I associate the, well, sort of lower class / middle class areas a little bit more, that like people would have like their animals or like some vegetable garden around, even though this is probably not lived in by people who would actually have the area to do that. But I just thought for the courtyard, bring some life in it to it, and there are, I think, 4 chickens in the courtyard. Also, later on, this I actually didn't record, because I just thought like, alright, this is going to be too crazy, but I also added a well to this building. And for a long time I was actually thinking, because the well was large enough to, well, hold a certain something, I just thought of like, I could add a crocodile in there and then it would like jump out of the well. And yeah, I really just thought of like, this is probably a little bit morbid and might make me look insane, but just for fun's sake, I really thought of like having like a static chicken hanging on like some kind of like fishing thing and just having it suspended above the well, and then of course the crocodile would jump up and try to eat it. I am not insane, but I think I just built way too long, and then you kind of get a little bit loopy, I would say, and then you will just find everything funny. So yeah, that was a fun state of mind. But anyway, so as I said, because the building is also a little bit closer to the Midas district, so a little bit closer to like the wealthy area of Theonopolis, I did want to make one side of the building a little bit more, well, stone, a little bit more, I would say, just a little bit wealthier looking without actually using any marble. So there is going to be a clear, well, for now there is a clear divide between the Midas district, which is like the wealthy palace area, and the little bit less wealthy, lower middle class outskirts. So actually right now you can divide Theonopolis in two. It's actually also divided in two because there's a river going through Theonopolis. And on one side you have a lot of buildings with a lot of marble, and then on this side you almost have none. Or at least you have a lot of buildings but not as much marble. Well, apart from like the rides and the coasters. Actually, I can already say that the kiddie coaster is a wooden coaster. So yeah, I think you guys already can see how I got completely insane with that. But anyway, so as I said, I wanted to keep this side of the building a little bit more wealthy looking, so a little bit more expensive materials. But then I just thought like, alright, if I make this completely stone, then it's just, well, I don't like that when you only use one material in a building. And with previous videos or previous buildings in, let's say, the Midas district or the main street and such, I could skip out on wood by using marble because it just looks so different because the different colors. But because I can't use marble in this building, I needed to use wood. So then I just thought like, let's go insane. Let's add a lot of wood. So, I mean, you could imagine that maybe all the wood is like carved and there's like some, you know, if you carve up wood, it makes it actually into like almost like statue-like. Wood can be kind of expensive as well. But to make this building a little bit faster, I wanted to basically make one wall and then be able to copy it around without it looking too bland. So that's basically how I sometimes make buildings a little bit faster. I am again going to go into the coaster in the next video, but just because this building just took so long, I just, you know, I already tried to cut it down a little bit, but eventually it was just like, alright, this entire video is going to be, well, mostly this building. But anyway, so I really like how the building turned out. It's just, I don't know why, but especially the back of the building, I don't know, it just feels like there's something missing. I can't put my finger on it what it is, but there's just something missing. But yeah, anyway, so back to what we're building right now. So as I said, I basically copied one wall around, but then obviously you can very quickly see like the human brain is perfect in that to see like patterns and such. So just one look at it and you could really see like, oh, this wall is just copied all around. So then I just thought like, alright, just to make it a little bit more lively and add a little bit more, well, less patterns to it, I would say. I basically added an extension to the building. Like, this is a tip I can say for almost every building. Like, if you don't want to make it look like a block or a cube, add extensions to it. Like, I usually go for towers because it's just you add height to a building without adding a lot of volume. But because, well, in ancient Greece, there was a little bit of like a limitation on building height, because eventually the weight of all the floors is just going to be so massive that the lower floors or just the ground level, like the walls just can't take it, so then eventually the building will just collapse in on itself. So that's why a lot of like ancient buildings are not that very tall. I think, yeah, if I'm correct, like only like with the use of, let's say, concrete and metal lately, we have been able to build gigantic buildings. So actually some towers are not realistic, and with these buildings I wanted to try and be a little bit more realistic. So this is probably actually the tallest building that's going to be in the outskirts, at least like residence slash home wise. Like official buildings, let's say temples and such, could be higher, but then they also, well, it's not that they really went a lot higher, but they could just be a little bit higher, just because there's probably like other materials being used, more sturdy and stronger materials, and probably the walls in, let's say, a temple are a lot thicker, so they can go up a little bit higher because there's a little bit more strength to the walls, I would say. But for a normal home, like, well, this is not a normal home, but it's sort of like an apartment complex and also communal building, you probably don't have really that thick walls. You probably have like walls just thick enough to basically keep like heat or cold out and make it so that the elements don't get into the building. But in the end, as I said, I wanted to make it look like it were 3 different buildings that were just sort of like thrown together and made this one building, this one apartment complex. So even though actually it looks kind of fancy and wealthy, but it's probably the one building where like the poorest of Theonopolis are going to live. Actually, I am planning on building other buildings, but I might do that on screen or off screen. And also with Plan 2 coming out, Theonopolis is going to be mayhem. But anyway, so I really like the courtyards that I've been building so far, but I do realize that those were also kind of for wealthier people, because you need to have the land available to actually have a courtyard. So this building has a courtyard basically because probably a wealthier person owns the land or owns all the buildings and had the availability to actually, or well, availability of like money, or well, just, well, money basically to actually build a courtyard, which makes it so that most buildings in this area will probably not have a courtyard. But I might come back onto that because Theonopolis is not the most realistic, and I just really like building those courtyards. I have no, well, it's probably just because I like just the feel of the courtyard. It's a little bit of like a different building aspect than I normally use, because like Main Street and actually a lot of buildings that I've built so far don't have them, and then building them now basically just awakens something. That sounds like some kind of like monster thing, but anyway, so another area for a shop. I basically had the shop there for a little bit just so that I could get the pathing right, so that basically everything surrounding this building is almost completely on the grid. So it's a little bit easy to actually place the paths around it. And just to get it like all completely, well, easy to set up, I had to place a shop there just so that you can like have the pathing actually really, well, fit in with the rest of the building. But anyway, so yeah, I wanted to make this building, or this side of the building, like the wealthiest side of the building, and it kind of went a little bit crazy when it came to like all the wood being used. But I don't think that you guys didn't expect me to go completely mental with a building that was already pretty large. But anyway, if you actually, well, if you keep the footprint or like the blueprint or the basic block building of this building and just use fancier materials, you could make this very easily into a palace. It has kind of like the same structure of a palace. Although you could add like a lot more buildings or like a lot more cubes to them. Or it's so that it actually has like, well, even with the size that it has now, if you just use fancier materials, this is already a pretty large palace then. But just with the materials being used, all of the doors, like this courtyard has actually a lot of doors. Actually, I'm going to replace one of those shed slash stall doors or stable doors. Stall is Dutch, so yeah, you got a word of Dutch today. But anyway, so I'm going to replace one of them and actually add another shop in there, so that you have 6 shops and 1 toilet building, and I might open up another wall and then build a staff area. But probably not for the one that is going to be in Theonopolis, because I think right next around this building there's going to be a staff building already, so that would be kinda overkill. I mean, I already give the staff in Theonopolis because there is staff in Theonopolis, because there are coasters and those tend to like to break down. So I needed staff there. Also, there are like 5 copies running around, because why not? Because, well, mostly because I like Gulpy, but as I said, there are 5 Gulpies running around. I have never seen one in the back of Theonopolis yet. So, yeah, I'm going to be happy when I see one, but probably not really going to happen, because most of the time I build paused, or at least in like pause mode, because then I have the most decent frame rate. That's going to be something annoying for the next video when I build coaster, because then you need to look at like how smooth it is. And it's also going to be the one coaster where I had to say goodbye to all the green stats, but compared to the blueprint coasters that are given by Frontier, I mean, I don't think that's like a high standard to keep, but the stats are better than the kiddie coasters that Frontier gives you. But yeah, so adding a little bit more liveliness to the building by basically adding a lot of just extra bits, just like pots, crates and such things that would basically just be like thrown around and forgotten. So that's where the chickens came in. And in the end I decided to not have the crocodile in the well, but yeah, the chickens have taken over the courtyard. Also, there's like 1 guard in the courtyard, just because why not? I originally thought to have it at the gate, or have him at the gate, but in the end he is in the courtyard and he's actually on top of the stairs in the courtyard. And yeah, this building is basically just a really enlarged version of the upper middle class home we built in the last video, but it's a little bit different and a little bit more useful, I would say, than that building. I probably have still forgotten to put that building on the workshop, but I'm going to get to that when, well, I want to get all of the buildings so far that I've built on the workshop before Planet Zoo goes live, because I know that by the time Planet Zoo goes live, Theonopolis is going to kind of be pushed back, because I can't juggle 2 projects. I mean, sometimes I've tried that and I just completely lose myself in one. Like with Ozaru, Theonopolis also kind of got pushed back. And also, this is one thing that you guys might know, and you might expect me to know, but I found out something new today. Or not today, when I was building this, because I'm basically doing this commentary a day after I've built everything. But I didn't know that there are pigeons in Planetcoaster, so those fly around. I didn't know that they would actually land on the roofs. So it was fun to see like just a flock of pigeons on the roof of that apartment complex building. But anyway, so yes, I wanted to basically build a really quick, small building just so that this kind of street corner was a little bit more finished. In the background you might see the well, and I think by this time I already deleted the crocodile. Maybe not, so keep an eye out if you see something jumping out of the well. I might have forgotten to delete it before I started building this building, but this building is basically just a little bit run of the mill easy building, or at least easy to me, because yeah, I get a lot of like comments of like, oh, this looks great, or any variation of that, and then sometimes you guys are, well, I'll say like, oh, I can't build like that, and I think almost everyone can build like this, but you also have to know that like, before I got to building like this, like, I think Planetcoaster has been out for 3 years, and I've been building for 3 years non-stop, so it's also a little bit of like, I have a lot of time in Planetcoaster. I think by, well, especially when Theonopolis is going to be finished, which is probably going to take maybe another 3 months before, maybe even longer. But by the end that Theonopolis might be finished, I will probably have like 2,000 hours in Planetcoaster, which is kind of insane if you think about it. 2,000 hours in one game. I'm really scared now what Planet Zoo will bring, because I already like the building in Planet Zoo a lot more actually than in Planetcoaster, but that might also be because Theonopolis right now, which is actually the only park that I've been building in apart from the Milestone Park, basically has like a steady 20 to 10 frames. And yeah, in Planet Zoo that was very different, even Ozaru. And I'm still sad that I didn't figure out sooner that it was the recording program that basically messed up and made everything look very glitchy in the commentated overview of, or the commentated tour of Ozaru. But we can't really go back to it. But anyway, so back to what we're building, because it's, for me, a really easy building. Again, for me, but then I have 3 years of experience in Planetcoaster, so I kind of know how to build. But this building, I think, is the most likely to also be able to be used in, like, if you make an Italian or like Italian Renaissance or just before the Renaissance type building or park, you could probably also use these buildings, because it's probably just the amount of like wood being used and just the way it's being used, like just the overall style of the buildings also is kind of reminiscent of, well, my biggest reference point for, well, it sort of before the Italian Renaissance type buildings is, again, Assassin's Creed, because, I mean, I think Assassin's Creed 2 was like the game that I played for the longest amount of time in the entire Assassin's Creed series. Like, I actually have never finished Odyssey. I think you guys already knew that. I've also never finished Black Flag. I basically, after like the Ezio saga was done, I never finished an Assassin's Creed game ever again. I've also never played Origins. Yeah, basically again, after the Ezio saga was done, I kind of not really got really back into Assassin's Creed. I just bought Odyssey just because I really like the setting. But anyway, back to what we're building. So yeah, the building is kind of simple. It's just like a bit of like a repeat of the building section that's like right across the street. which is basically just a block. That's the easy thing with ancient Grecian buildings. They were mostly very blocky. So if you really want to like get into more detailed buildings and you want an easier style, ancient Grecian is not that difficult because it's just very blocky. Like you can go the extra mile with ancient Grecian buildings and, well, go insane like I do, but when you get like the basics of it done, you kind of have like just the, well, you kind of have just an easy building style just because everything is a little bit blocky. Yeah, if I think about it now, like all the references that I've looked at and for all these ancient Grecian buildings, all were very blocky. Like some buildings, which were usually more official buildings, could be rounded, but most of them were very blocky. And then, well, all these beams sticking out to basically hold up the floor. And here is where a little bit of realism comes in, because when it's a wooden floor, you can use stone pillars and wooden beams, but a stone floor needs to be supported by stone pillars, because wood will just crack and crumble on the stone floor. So a little bit of realism in this building, because all of these floors or all of these roofs, and basically actually all of the floors, I imagine being at the side of the building, but I didn't build the inside of the building because I don't like building insides, because then you need to build tiny, and I don't do well with tiny buildings. But anyway, so all of these floors I imagine to be wooden, and they are holding up by these wooden beams that actually stick out of the building. So there is some kind of like reasoning behind all these beams sticking out of the building so far. Maybe like the lower floor of this building is actually a stone floor, because there are stone, maybe plaster, well, yeah, stone pillars holding it up. But then there are also wooden beams, so probably not. If you want a realistic building, or like a realistic medieval building, or just any building that doesn't use metal or steel and such, stone holds up stone and wood. Wood doesn't hold up stone. So if you want it realistic and you want to have a wooden floor, you can use stone pillars and you can use wooden pillars. But if you have a stone floor, you need stone pillars, because again, wood will just crack under the weight of stone. That's basically going to be it for today. I'm going to basically clutter up this kind of street, because, well, Plant Zoo is coming around, so when we are going into Plant Zoo, then I actually have like something to show you guys of like this we have achieved in this actually 2 very short weeks. But yes, again, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, I hope to see you back in the next one, and I hope you don't forget to hit the like button, because it does help out. For the next video, we are finally going to go into that coaster that I promised, and I already went insane with it, so really, well, it's going to be a fun video, the next one. But anyway, hope all of you guys have an amazing day, and bye bye.